Hey friends, I want to say welcome to you. We're so glad to have you joining us and hope that you are plugged into this series as we talk about how to be rich. And at the end of the day, what we recognize is that if we're going to be rich anyway, we might as well be good at it. Now, I know there may be some that push back on the whole idea of the fact that we're rich, and we recognize that some people may be going through really difficult financial situations. Maybe your life was turned upside down by some sort of medical bills that you're still trying to get out from under of, or maybe you've lost a job and that's provided some really difficult financial circumstances. But as we've talked about over these past several weeks, for most of us, we really are rich. And here's the real simple definition of what it means to be rich. You're rich if God has blessed you with more than you need to survive. If you've got more than you need, then you're rich. And we've talked about this because the Bible says in 1 Timothy chapter 6, it starts in verse 17 with these words, "Command those that are rich." And generally when you read those words, if you're not convinced of this, if you don't understand, hey, I've got more than I need, so therefore I'm rich, our first mode of defense is to just kind of check out of this, to say this really doesn't apply to me. This is for those other people. This is for the rich people that I know. This is for the people down the street. This is for the people that live in another neighborhood or that drive different cars than we drive. But the reality is that if God has blessed you with more than you need, then you really are rich. And we've said very clearly and hope that you hear that our desire in helping you to realize that is not that you would feel guilty for being rich. We don't want anybody to feel guilty for the way that God's blessed you. Our desire is that you would feel responsible, that with riches come another degree of responsibility. And so that's really what we're talking about this week, because the Apostle Paul goes on to tell Timothy, he in talking about how rich people should live, and again, if you want to be good at being rich, this is for you. He says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. Again, he's talking about that if you want to be good at being rich, this is how you can do it. You can, first of all, you can do good. You can be rich in good deeds. So in other words, you don't want to just be average good. You want to be above average good. You want to be rich in good deeds. You want to find ways to do good for other people. And then he talks about how we manage our riches, or how we manage the riches that we're in control of. And I'll tell you why I differentiated there in just a minute. He says to be generous and willing to share. One of the things that is really key in understanding this is the misconception that we often have. And one of the ways that we've termed this is around here is we call it the consumption assumption. And the consumption assumption is this. The consumption assumption is that if it comes to me, it must be for me. And the Bible would say that that's not accurate. And so what he says is that we're to be generous and willing to share. Now, any parent understands how difficult it is to be willing to share. If you have a 3-year-old, you know that to teach them to share is one of the most difficult things you can teach them. They can receive a gift, and it's a little teddy bear, and they can have played with it 4 days ago for 15 minutes and put it to the side, but when their brother or sister comes and wants to grab it, they immediately say what words? They say, "That's mine. That's mine, and I don't want to share it." And so what we have to learn is that, first of all, nothing belongs to us. The psalmist wrote in Psalm chapter 24, verse 1, he said, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it." And so part of being responsible is to understand that we're not owners, we're just stewards. And the reality is we get to steward what belongs to God. When it comes to us, it's not necessarily ours to consume, it's ours to steward, that this belongs to God and I get to manage it here. And so he tells us to be generous and willing to share. And so really what we're talking about this week is being generous. And I think that unless we come up with a plan for generosity, we won't be generous people. So we talked this week about how if we're going to be generous people, we have to have a plan. And the plan that we talked about this week is 3 prongs. One, it's that we're priority percentage givers, that we just identify to say, hey, I want to begin with an amount, a percentage amount, and I want to start there. So we want to be priority percentage givers. Secondly, we want to be people who give by faith, because we're to live our lives by faith. And so what level of giving requires me to have faith? And that's one of the things that my wife and I, as we give, that every month we experience, that when we push that give button online, it challenges us to say, this is not what we trust in. We're able to give because this is not where our hope is. Our faith is in God. And so when we give, it stretches our faith, and we want to always make sure that our giving is stretching our faith. And then lastly, we want to be people who respond to needs. And so this week we presented the needs. We're going to begin sponsoring a compassion area ministry in Haiti. And so we hope that you'll participate in that with us. And so really, as you get to your groups, we want you to talk about a few different things. I think two really big areas to think about and to talk about would be, one, who are some generous people that have impacted your life? Who do you know that has been really generous, and how have they impacted your life? And then secondly, I would encourage you to just talk about what your generosity plan has been, and what are some ways that maybe you've been challenged to be more generous. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have some great discussion around these ideas. God bless you.